Hi guys, my name's Natalia and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be talking about my February reads. I've read 6 books in total, so grab yourself a drink and let's get into it. I think let's start with the physical books that I read and then we can go on to the books that I read on my Kindle. So first of all, we've got That's Not My Name by Megan Lally. I think this book had a lot of potential. The premise was interesting and it had like a very tense atmosphere that really drew me in from the very beginning. This story is told from 2 perspectives. The first perspective is that of a girl who wakes up in a ditch and she doesn't remember anything. She doesn't remember her name. She doesn't know how she ended up in that ditch. Later, she is found by a police officer. And later, there's a man that claims to be her father. And, he's got like all the documentation. He's also got like pictures and all of that. So, after checking him thoroughly, the police officer decides that it's safe for her to go and live with that man who claims to be her father. Because he even got like her birth certificate and all of that. So, what could go wrong, right? And then we've got the second perspective, which is of a boy who is looking for his missing girlfriend. So she went missing. They were like out together and she went missing the same day. And, he's like the main suspect. It's like everyone in that town turned their backs on him and suddenly think he did something to his girlfriend. So he's trying to find her, not just because he loves her and he obviously wants her to come back, but also, so that people do not think that he actually did something to her. So we are told a story from these 2 perspectives. And definitely the perspective of the girl was a lot more like chilling and unsettling, just because like the thought of waking up somewhere with no memory and then coming home to a man who technically feels like a stranger to you but claims to be your father. I just think the setting is so scary and chilling. I had like goosebumps for a majority of the book, but there were a few things that like prevented me from fully enjoying this book. First of all, I found some of the decisions that the characters made a little unconvincing. I just struggle to understand their motivations at times. Like, for example, the boy, he obviously kept telling the police that he's not guilty, but he would still withhold some information, some pretty important information. Don't really understand why he would do that. There were a few other, things. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it, but I was just like, why? Why did this happen? And then, like, the mystery itself, it was engaging, but honestly, some of it felt a bit predictable. Now, I didn't really predict all of it. There were some elements that still shocked me, but I would say the huge part of the mystery was pretty predictable and not that shocking, to be honest. I didn't realize it at first when I was reading it, but then I was reading other people's reviews, which I usually do, just like to see what other people thought, and a lot of people pointed out very obvious plot holes. Again, don't really want to say exactly because that would be a spoiler, but honestly, if you just go to Goodreads and you read the 1-star or 2-star reviews, a lot of people do point out the plot holes or really unrealistic scenarios, and that just got me thinking yeah, okay, that was a bit unrealistic. It is a pretty short read. I didn't really feel bored. I was actually pretty engaged till the end. It was not a bad book, but it definitely could have been better. So I ended up giving it 3 stars. Also, it's YA, so if you don't like YA thrillers, then definitely do not pick this up. I don't really mind. I do like YA thrillers, but this one just was not for me. Okay, the next book I read is another YA thriller mystery, and this one is part of a series. It is the last book in the Natural series. It's called Bad Blood. I will admit this was my least favorite book in this entire series. It is a 4-book series, but this one was a little bit disappointing. Maybe let's start with the good parts. I loved Dean, and I think this book just really made me realize how much he's grown throughout this series. You know, at first he was this very mysterious and guarded and brooding character, but throughout the series, especially in front of Cassie, thanks to Cassie, he started opening up so much. He started being, a little bit more cheerful. He's still like a little brooding. He still likes to wear black and all of that. But like he has changed so much. And, I love seeing that. Like I love seeing that his relationship with Cassie changed him so much and made him so much happier. I love Dean. I love him and Cassie, and like they will forever be one of my favorite book couples. Now, when it comes to the story, so I felt like it dragged a little bit, especially compared to the previous 3 books. And now the plot twists were a bit over the top. Like some of the plot twists felt a bit too exaggerated and ridiculous. I just felt like it was weird. There were like some long lost relatives coming up, and everyone had some sort of connections to each other. Like it just felt a bit ridiculous. That said, I still found the plot twist quite shocking, and obviously one of my favorite parts of this entire series is the found family trope. I feel like with each book you can see the characters really becoming even closer and closer, like a tight-knit family. You can also see them bickering and arguing, so they are like real family to each other. I felt so empty after finishing this last book and this entire series, just because I loved it so much and I grew so attached to these characters. It was a bit hard to like let go of them. I will miss them so much. Even though this was my least favorite book in the series, I would still recommend the entire series as a whole because I think it's very good and I had so much fun reading it. Now, the next book, I guess it's a novella that I read. It's actually provided at the end of this book. It is 12. So it is like the novella that comes at the end of the Natural series. It's just a very short mystery, and we also get to see how the characters are doing a few years after the events of Bad Blood took place. So while I didn't feel really engaged with the storyline or the mystery itself, I just thought it was nice to see how the characters are doing a few years later. I definitely wish we got to see more of Briggs and Sterling, who are the FBI agents that kind of take care of the program, the Naturals program. We didn't get to see much of them, but anyway, it was a nice, quick read. I gave it 3.5 stars. Also, I forgot to mention, but I gave Bad Blood 3.75 stars. The next book I read is a second book in the Simon Snow trilogy, which is called Wayward Son. Carry On, which is the first book, is honestly one of my favorite books. Just like the whole world and all of the characters feel so comforting to me, and I love the atmosphere of that book. And actually, the second book was a little bit of a disappointment. First of all, this storyline was kind of strange. I feel like the plot didn't have any strong planning. It felt like the author just went with whatever came to her head at the time. It was a little bit chaotic, maybe. I didn't really feel engaged in the plot line, but I did have fun reading it because of the characters. But then they also do not feel like the same characters that we got in Carry On. They feel a bit like some watered down versions of themselves. So while I still like them, I definitely felt like they changed a little bit. Like something just felt off about them. And there was quite a lot of miscommunication in this book, so that was really frustrating. It also delved into some heavier topics like depression. So I do appreciate the more serious tone. At the end, I just felt like nothing was really resolved at the end of the book. It ended with a very abrupt cliffhanger that just happened out of nowhere. I feel like none of the issues really ended up being resolved. And like the characters' mental and emotional states didn't really seem any better. I was just hoping for like a more meaningful process or a closure, but maybe that will happen in the last book. I'm not sure. Definitely Simon and Baz's relationship was my highlight. I still felt like they were really cute together, although they're definitely going through like a little bit of a rough patch, but still. And I do like their friendship with Penny. I just think like they are so cute together. So while I enjoyed this read, I don't think it was anything spectacular, so I just ended up giving it 3.5 stars. Now let's move on to the books that I read on my Kindle. So the first book I read is the last book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, which is A Curse for True Love, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Unfortunately, this was my least favorite book in this trilogy. I feel like Jax and Evangeline have been through so much that it was a bit hard to get through the first 80% of the book just because of how things were turning out for them. And then I felt like the ending was a bit rushed. It was really abrupt, and it was a shame that we didn't really get to see more of Jax and Evangeline just being openly and joyfully in love. I really hope that Stephanie Garber decides to write a novella of, you know, what their lives look like after the events of A Curse of True Love. But then again, I also wish that we could see more of their relationship in the trilogy itself. So it's a bit of a shame, you know, it is already a slow burn romance, and I feel like I wanted more. Like, it was just not enough for me. And then I felt like compared to the previous 2 books, the story in the last book was like not that magical and not that eventful, and it was dragging a little bit, and I hated every chapter from Apollo's point of view. So we didn't get his point of view in the other 2 books, but this book had Apollo's point of view. I know that his chapters were written to fill in certain gaps in the story, and I understand that, but I still hated his chapters, and I didn't like reading about him, okay? Anyway, I still enjoyed it. I still had so much fun reading it. I still thought it was a good book. Even though it's my least favorite in this trilogy as a whole is one of my favorite book series of all time, so I definitely highly recommend it. And while I think this last installment could have been written a little bit better, I still had so much fun reading it, and it just felt so bittersweet to have to say goodbye to these characters because I love them so much, and I just felt really sad to part with them. Okay, the last book that I read in February is Part of Your World. It's written by Abby Jimenez, and this is the first book that I've read by this author. She's quite popular, and her books are very liked in the bookish community, so I wanted to, you know, see what the hype is all about. And, you know, I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and I sometimes find romances quite cringy, but I felt like this one was a good blend of funny and emotional without being like overly cringy. So this book offers, you know, a heartfelt romance, but it also delves into some heavier topics such as family pressures, emotional and physical abuse, depression, and all of that. And we've got these 2 people that are complete opposites of each other. We've got Daniel, who runs a B&B, and he's a carpenter, and he lives in this very small town, or maybe it's even a village, where literally everyone knows each other. That's how small it is. He also takes care of a baby goat wearing pajamas, and honestly that part really sold me. I thought it was so cute, and if I met a man that was taking care of a baby goat wearing pajamas, I might fall in love as well. So I don't blame Alexis. There are also a lot of like other animals, like there's a dog, some pig, and all of that. So if you're an animal lover like me, you might actually really enjoy that aspect, because I did. Then we've got Alexis, who, like I said, is the opposite of Daniel. She lives in a big city. She comes from a wealthy family of renowned doctors, and she works at this hospital that was founded by her family, and her family has worked there for generations. So it's almost like she doesn't really have a choice of becoming someone else or living a different life. This is the path that was paved for her, ever since she was born, which is a bit sad. I felt like it's really hard to relate to Alexis, maybe because of her upbringing, maybe because she's wealthy and she comes from this family of renowned doctors, and they're all like this really posh people. Same goes for her friends. I feel like for an average person, it's going to be quite difficult to relate to her. Although I still have to say she's not really that shallow. She's definitely not as shallow as some of her friends, because the things that they said were so bad, honestly. Her friends are so out of touch with reality, it's crazy. And I still feel like she really comes to a lot of conclusions while she spends time with Daniel. She realizes that not everyone is living as privileged of a life as she is living and all of that. But it's not just that I couldn't relate to her, it's just that I couldn't really understand many of her decisions, and they frustrated the heck out of me. The way she sometimes treated Daniel, it was really terrible, and I felt so bad for him. I don't know, I feel like he is such an angel. He's really kind and patient and understanding, and not just towards Alexis, but literally towards everyone he meets. And I feel like everyone needs a Daniel in their lives. He is just so precious. He's a golden retriever, literally. Maybe he doesn't really deserve Alexis. Like, I do feel that they love each other, but I just feel like he definitely fought for this relationship a lot harder, and I feel like she was a bit selfish at times. And he was nothing but selfless, to be honest. But okay, despite my issues with Alexis, I still thought it was a story that balanced humor and some heavy topics really well. And I still felt it was a very compelling read, and I had so much fun reading it. I also thought the romance was cute, and I fell in love with Daniel so much. Also, it was quite nice to read about the town where he lives. It's like a very tight-knit community where everyone knows each other and everyone like takes care of each other. And while I'm someone who likes a good big city, I don't know, it was really heartwarming to read about such a place and just think about what would it be like to live in such a place. I definitely enjoy this book regardless, and I will read other books by this author as well. But yeah, that was the last book I read in February. Let me know what was your favorite February read. I think for me it was A Curse for True Love. I think it was the best book I read this month. Anyway, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!